It is now 6:30 p.m. and I would like to call to order the December 16, 2019 study session of the Board of Trustees of the Aldine Independent School District. Let the minutes reflect that we have a quorum of the following members present: Rose, Paul, Connie, Steve, Kim, Randy, and Viola. So we will now start our meeting with a report from Dr. Latanya Goffney.
Mr. Mead, Board of Trustees, we have a couple of items on my agenda tonight. The first one is just on page 29. Basically, it's the approval of updating our nameplates, our signature plates. They're used for finance and payroll checks. And so anytime we have a reorganization of the board, it takes approximately 30 days to obtain current signature plates. So with the permission of the board, it's my recommendation that the district continue using the current plates until the new ones are received. Any questions?
Board?
And then, of course, it kind of goes along with the other item that's under my agenda, but it certainly is the pleasure of the board. So I'm going to give it back to you for the nominating committee report and the election of the 2020 officers.
Okay. That will be the chairman of that committee is Dr. Kim Booker.
Yes.
Well, before we do that report, we'll be talking in the executive session. Okay, on that. Okay.
That concludes my report. You have several items at your desk, at your spots. Just a reminder that this is our final meeting of the year, and in the spirit of Christmas, you have a gift from me, and I hope you like it. To help those of you who have your favorites, even though you can't have favorites, Ms. Avalos, Mr. Mead, and I hope Mr. Bates doesn't have a favorite.
No, I love them all the same.
Okay, and Dr. Garcia looked the other way because she's guilty as well. And so, no, you can't have favorites. And so this helps you not have favorites.
Favorite what?
Comprehensive high school.
Oh, certainly. Or middle school.
So all 5 comprehensive high schools are there. So you have that from me, the communications department. You have a gift that we hope you like. What do you have there? Oh, that is your favorite. You can't have favorites, Ms. Avalos.
No, she can have that as a favorite. Come on, that's her school.
Is.
Yeah, she can be.
Yes.
Yeah, she can do that. Yeah.
And then that's not a comprehensive high school, though, Ms. Don't tell me.
That's different.
It's different, so that can be your favorite. That can be your favorite.
But the games are fun, so I invite all of you to come watch the football games, and you can choose who you want to cheer for. But what's really nice is when we play other teams, then we know the team that's playing from Aldine is our favorite. That's nice for sure.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's why I always sit on the home side,
Do you?
no matter who's playing.
That's true. That's true.
Okay, Dr. Goffney.
That concludes mine.
And that includes yours, and we'll have Dr. Chapman in operations, our deputy superintendent.
President Mead and Dr. Goffney and members of the board, my agenda starts on page 32, and it is a standard report, and it includes information regarding child nutrition services, and it indicates there just the standard information. The only thing that's new there is it just shares information regarding the 27 elementary schools that hosted the family feast. Just wanted to share that with you. Are there any questions regarding the report?
Word?
Who made the cornbread dressing?
It wasn't Selena Chapa. If there are no questions, President Mead, I have no further items on the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, then, if that's all you have, then we'll go to our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Todd Davis.
My agenda begins on page 37. The only item on my agenda this evening is the Davis High School new band uniforms. It's been tradition that when our band uniforms are up for a renewal or to be replaced, that we share the new design with the board. Our band uniforms are on a 7-year cycle. And actually, the Davis High School band uniforms were delayed. So it's kind of hard to believe that it has been 7 years, but it's actually been 9, I believe. And so this is Davis High School's first update, and I'm hoping behind me is our student, and
Good
I
deal.
thought you were going to do that, Miss.
I think I may have to. And I do not see them. Does anyone check outside?
I see 'em
I know
outside.
Refugio, our executive director of performing arts, is here.
Now, Todd, that doesn't mean they don't get the uniforms if they don't show up, do they? They still get them, don't they?
We may have to just delay till January
Yeah.
to share with you. Okay. Well, if they're not here, and we may delay at the board's pleasure,
Whenever they get here, we
and we
will.
can just jump in.
Is the student not here or the uniform not here?
The student who's wearing the uniform is not here.
I was thinking if we get the uniform,
I don't think I'll fit in there. I wish I could. But unless they show up here in the next few moments, then I think at this point that's all I have on my agenda. And if you'd like,
Well, if they come in, we'll reopen it back to your session, okay, if they come in, where you can introduce them and show the board the.
that sounds great. I'll do that. And that concludes my agenda.
Okay, then we'll go next to our chief of schools, Katie Rohde.
Good evening, Mr. Mead, Dr. Goffney, Dr. Chapa, members of the board. I am going to be sharing with you, here's our,
Oh, we have time. Is he gonna put the uniform on, maybe?
do you want to do that first?
I think, is he gonna put it on, or he's
The
just?
model's not here yet. Okay. Well,
You
We
go
will-
ahead with your program, and when you get through, we'll go back to the
as
uniform.
long as I don't have to be the one that models it, I'm great. So I'm going to be sharing with you, it begins on page 267 of the board book. And this is, I'll get out of the way. So the end of November and the beginning of December, we administered what was called the Panorama Social and Emotional Survey to all of our professional staff, teachers, school-based staff, as well as 3rd through 12th grade students. And I want to share with you the data that we received, because this is going to be pretty important as we are moving forward in our plan regarding social emotional learning. So the vision for social emotional learning and why we administered this survey was to gather student and staff feedback on our strategic priority number 2, which is school culture. And the purpose was to gather baseline data to understand where the strengths, the gaps, and where we need to align some of our resources, such as professional development. We also want to empower our principals to interpret data. This is data that our principals have not had previously. This is information that they may have done surveys of teachers and students, and many of them do. But this is where they can compare the information on their campus, but also cross campuses, to see where they are strong and where they need to do some more work. So the content of these surveys was research-backed instruments that were gathered, and we, along with Dr. Charlotte Davis and the student support team, we've been working with Panorama to decide which were the topics that we wanted to have information. We wanted to learn where we stood as a district and gather that information. So teacher and staff topics that we landed on were school climate, professional learning about social emotional learning. We knew that this was going to be new for a lot of our staff, and in order to see where we need to grow, we needed to know, what do you need support in? Educating all students and teacher self-reflection. Then student topics. Again, these were all 3rd through 12th grade students that were given topics related to school climate, school safety, sense of belonging, teacher-student relationships, and growth mindset. So I'm going to share with you first the teacher results. Almost 4,000 staff completed this survey, which was an incredible number, well over our goal of 50%, so we were very excited about that. According to the data, Aldine ISD teachers report at or above the national average in the following topics: educating all students, teacher self-reflection, and professional learning about social emotional learning. But perceptions of school climate are below the national average. And so this is definitely an area that we know that we need to focus our work. So when we looked at staff results by group, we noticed a few things. In the panorama dashboard, we are able to drill down by everything from demographics to gender to school location. Some noticings regarding the data for staff. Black or African American staff report slightly above average perceptions in the following areas: educating all students, professional learning about social emotional learning, and teacher self-reflection. Hispanic Latino teachers report a 10% more positive perception of school climate than their peers. White staff report lower perceptions across all topics. So this is, again, this is baseline information, but we are looking at this as a department and really trying to figure out how we can provide, number one, more support regarding social emotional learning for staff, as well as more resources so that they have access to that. The dashboard is fascinating because we can drill down by school and we can see campuses who are exhibiting a great amount of strength in many areas and some campuses that are not. Perceptions vary quite a bit across all schools. There are many areas to celebrate. We recommend using this tool to notice bright spots. So when we met with the principals a week and a half ago at our ILT meeting right before the break, we talked to them about the fact that this right here is truly an opportunity for them to capture what is working well and also what their peers are doing that they can try to emulate.
Katie?
Yes, yes,
sorry,
sir.
Do you have a list of questions that you asked them to get the results?
Yes, we have.
Will we know what those questions are?
I am going to give you some examples of some of the questions that we asked of the students.
Okay.
I have a list of all the questions that were asked for each of the 4 topics for the teachers. And so we were able to drill in and even look at in school climate, what is the part that that our teachers felt uncomfortable or that they were not comfortable with some of the things that were there. So we are able to do that.
So,
Yes.
but to me, the numbers don't mean anything to me if I don't know
Have the questions.
what the questions are.
Well, I could certainly include some of those on the board communication. I think that would be a great, but you know, we were able to look at that at our training. Principals could also look at it and see by question how their staff had answered.
So Katie, in this example,
Yes,
we
ma'am.
know the columns,
Mhm.
but the rows, are they just intended to show the variations?
Yes.
And no specific elements or row description?
Yes, so this is an example of what the campuses would look like. So for example, our dashboard, it has that on the top with the teacher information, and then it has a list of every campus. And we're able to go and look at a quick glance and see which campuses are above the national average and which ones are below. And then where do we need to mobilize some of our professional development and support?
And are those questions that I'm talking about are questions that all other schools
Every school in the nation.
in the nation would use the same? Okay.
Yep.
Get an idea, okay.
Every school that chose those specific topics. So there was a menu of about 15 topics that we could choose from. Each of those topics included about 7 questions in there. So we don't want to make it too lengthy. So it was about 30 questions that the teachers answered. Yes.
My question is going to maybe drill down more specifically to us. And talking about school climate, can we get numbers as to teachers' races versus
Yes.
student races?
Yes.
Because we've had the same problem at Harris County Department of Education. There are just some people that had a better perception of how students were doing. I grew up in a time when we were totally segregated,
Mhm.
and our teachers worked really hard to educate us. And I've also been told that when those ratios start to change, if there's a misalignment of those ratios, that it changes perception as well.
Yes, we are able to drill down by ethnicity, by gender, by their job role. So we can see which even, for example, elementary teachers versus elementary counselors. So we were able to look at all of those different dimensions on the dashboard. Yeah. So now the student results. Now these were given, again, 3rd through 12th grade, but 3rd through 5th grade had separate questions, and 6th through 12th grade had their own set of questions as, appropriate for that age level. Again, we were very excited about the participation. So in just 3rd through 5th grade, we had 14,000 students participate. Students in this age band report above the national average in school belonging. In particular, 3 out of 4 students report that their teachers give them quite a bit or a tremendous amount of support in school. And as you notice at the bottom there, there's an example of one of those questions. How much support do the adults at your school give you? And 74% of our 3rd through 5th graders report it favorably to that. Again, in 3rd through 5th grade, 60% of students reported a positive perception of school climate. This falls into the 40th percentile of other urban elementary schools with a high percentage of free and reduced lunch students. So the dashboard also allows us to click on urban schools so that we can filter out for districts that look much like us, as well as those with over a 70% free and reduced lunch. In particular, fewer than half of students report that the behavior of others helps their learning. So an example of that question is, at your school, how much does the behavior of other students hurt or help your learning? And 43% responded favorably to that. So as you can see, we're in the lower end as far as school climate, 60%, which is slightly below the national trend line when it comes to elementary students. And last one is as we look at our 3rd through 5th grade results by grouping. And as Mr. Shanklin, you talked about the by ethnicity, this is where we were able to drill down in each of the 3 survey areas. Black or African American students report below average receptions across all topics. That includes school belonging, school climate, and school safety. Hispanic, Latino students are the largest group and report just above the average. And then, as you can see at the bottom, it had special education students. They report lower perceptions across all topics with the biggest gap in school belonging. So our elementary students, there's some work to be done, especially as we look at certain areas. Perceptions seem relatively similar across gender and grade level, with a slight dip in 3rd grade.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Why do you believe that there's a gap
Between which ones?
between African American and Hispanic?
At that age level, you know what? I can theorize on why that is. It baffled me, if I can be honest with you. It surprised me at the elementary level because of obviously the lower class size that we have, which would contribute to that belonging. But I can't answer until we probably get some more qualitative information.
And I'm along with Mr. Bass right now because it seems counterintuitive. What we know is that ratios, we have a lot of African-American teachers in Aldine, higher than our ratio of African-American students.
Sure.
And I'm pretty sure it goes across the board. So that surprises me as well, because I would want to think that they cared as much, because and that's not reflecting that at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, when we look at the data, our African-American students aren't performing.
Aren't
achieving at.
Well, that's also counterintuitive to me.
Right. And so what I know for sure is that having the best people regardless of race in the job
Mhm.
is going to give us better outcomes. But you're absolutely right. It is an anomaly, but I'm thinking this is reflective of the achievement data that our African-American students aren't performing.
That there are gaps that exist very similar to that.
I like us to continue thinking about this because this year is going to be a focus on student outcomes, all student outcomes. And if this is one of those areas we need to focus on, I would like everybody to give a little extra thought to that.
Thank you.
And we have been talking about this gap for quite a while. And we see that with every report that comes from operations and, and we see the gap there is, and we see that in a lot of our paper. We also see, and I don't know if it had anything to do with, but the incident report that we see, okay?
Right.
And so I'm just wondering, but after Paul says that, when we have more African-American teachers, I'm thinking that they know the culture of these children, so I don't understand why we see 25% of our population with 50 to 60% of the incidents, okay? And I know we've been talking that for a long time. Maybe this will take us where we need to go.
Right.
And find out what
And I'll
the
work
problem is
with,
there.
Mr. Mead, I'll work with restorative practices. We've seen some positive results of that. We have a cohort of schools that started with Harris County Department of Ed. We're going to continue that work and bring in another cohort of schools, but we've seen some good data from those practices. So the initiative with the entire social and emotional learning initiative is going to help with that as well. I know years ago when we brought the studies from Texas A&M, when we focused on culture awareness, it was third grade actually where these gaps started to start happening. So we do need to concentrate our efforts with third grade and beginning to work and close some of these gaps.
Some of the things we can control and we can do, but we may also have to do more for our parents in the community from the population to see how can we help them.
So
Absolutely.
it kind of connects to all of our strategic priorities.
Right.
I think for those, Mr. Bates, who's new, and Dr. Garcia and the rest of you all remember, we rolled out, we didn't want to roll out in relation to her reference to a cohort. We piloted an intentional focus on social emotional practices, restorative justice, and those different things on, I think it was 8 of our campuses. 11 campuses total. And what was startling or alarming or encouraging would be the better word, is the fact that this data for those schools was much better, both teacher and student groups than the others. So we know that we're headed in the right direction. And so we're excited about that. But going to your point, in addition to what we can do in the classrooms, House Bill 3 and our focus on building out our parent engagement office is going to be extremely helpful. So it won't be one-offs. We're going to truly work to be intentional about how we engage our parents. We have evidence of how successful it can be on our ACE campuses and how engaged our at Worship and Goodman, those parents, my gosh, it's just powerful to see the level of involvement. And we hope to replicate that across the district with our new office that we're about to roll out. So this is the baseline, but it's exciting. I think before it's all over, because this is one that a lot of people are recommending that we use, Panorama. And so having our baseline is going to be beneficial to measure our success. So decisions won't be made based on how we feel. We'll be able to bring you this data each year after implementing different initiatives.
Right. And I think that also to the point is that what we're learning, and I think what we all know to be true, is just like we need to teach teachers how to teach sometimes, what are good instructional strategies and how do we best convey information. Many of our students also need to be taught how to build relationships with students and how to connect and how to create buy-in from their students. And this is definitely confirming that we need to more explicitly teach some of that to our teachers.
I just had a question for me. You referenced the report from operations. I'm not
I'm sorry, I'm just,
Discipline report. as well.
I'm just talking.
Oh, I see.
Oh, the one that Dr.
The
Davis.
monthly discipline report.
I'm just talking about Selena, I'm
In,
sorry.
in the discipline report, majority of our students who receive exposure or ISS and discipline are African American.
Right,
That is-
a higher
That's actually Charlotte,
percentage.
that's Charlotte.
Dr. Davis, yes.
Yeah.
In one
I
area,
confused you there.
one area that I see that the school belonging and the school climate, but I'm really, really concerned about safety.
Mhm.
That if our students don't feel safe, because I'm
Right.
looking at the numbers and look at that -10.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah,
know we don't have all
that's-
of
Still,
it.
we don't want any of them.
Yeah, we
Yes.
don't want any of them, and that is, as we look at that, that's the native Hawaiian. There's only 29 students there, but obviously
They don't
they're
feel
not
safe.
feeling safe.
Yes.
And that was actually one of the things that we did with the principals, as well as they were able to bring a counselor assistant principal to the training. And we talked about how can you drill down, and we actually had a couple, the elementary school assistant superintendents can attest to this, that we talked about, they said, well, it's our third grade, Hispanic boys. They were able to get to that point, and they said, you know what, we noticed it was happening at recess. Oh, we need to create something specifically for this group because obviously they're not feeling connected. Do you see what I mean? That's the beauty of having good data like this. It was incredibly eye-opening to our leaders as they not only looked at their data, but they also cheated and looked at other people's to see how they were stacking up.
The only other thing that I would add is the comment earlier by Dr. Davis about focusing on third grade. And I think what is probably obvious is that this behavior or these senses of belonging or climate in the school or safety don't begin automatically, at that level. And so I would encourage us to begin at the earliest years so that as they reach this level, the confidence builds or all of those other things build and
Right.
not wait until third grade.
Right, exactly.
And I want to agree with Dr. Garcia as well. What I'm focusing on are simply the group size numbers. If you notice, we've got over 10,000, the group size for Hispanics are over 10,000. It seems as if, and that's a +1, there seems to be more of a sense of community among those large groups. Maybe they support each other and those types of things. I don't know how we buy into that one. But the other thing that is kind of stark to me is that when I look to the far right at the group sizes in males and females, I mean, notice that. The boys are feeling
Less sense of
less
belonging.
a sense of a belonging, a less in school climate,
Mhm.
than the girls. Now, that there's something there because we know after third grade, all of those things start to cement themselves throughout the school. We focus a lot on third grade for a lot of our data and that type of thing because we understand that if you're not reading it but it seems like by the third grade, if you're not having a sense of belonging or climate of safety, that's not going to get much better as you go through your academic career.
Lower grade, lower level, pre-K.
Right. And unfortunately, we aren't able to capture the information. Panorama said that they're trying to develop a survey for our younger students so that we can try to capture some of that information, but at this time it wasn't developmentally appropriate. But yes, you're right.
So Katie, just go back to the, both for the adults and for the students. So the opportunity was available to all.
Correct.
These were just those who chose,
For the staff, that's correct.
right? So, but they had plenty of notice and reminders. So
Yes.
it was equally distributed among
Absolutely.
all staff or all students.
Yes.
These are just the ones that took the time to respond.
That's correct.
And we had an above average participation.
Much above the Panorama's average and the national average, yes.
For the teachers or?
For the teachers, yeah. Students, we could compel them to do that, so that was a little different, but because we put a computer in front of them and we can't push submit necessarily, but we can provide them the time and space to do it. So,
Also
I'm sorry.
striking is there's a good correlation between student achievement. on the
Yes.
campuses.
yes,
Our 8 campuses all had high, so it's interesting how everything kind of works together.
yes. It confirmed many things
Yes.
that we had already suspected at some of our places. So let's talk about our 6th through 12th grade. Again, our middle school and high school took a separate survey. It was on the same topics. 24,000 students in those grade levels participated. Students report in the 40th percentile of the national benchmark in school belonging and school safety, so below the national average. In particular, 3 out of 5 students report that it is not at all likely that someone from school will bully them online. But notice here is school belonging on your left-hand side. And again, this is compared to other urban schools with a high percentage of free and reduced price lunch. And then school safety on your right, again, compared to that same group of students. So we are, it is slightly below the national average, and it is definitely something that we are going to be focused on. Again, continuing with 6th through 12th grade, student perceptions of school climate in grades 6 through 12 are below the 10th percentile in the national benchmark. So this is definitely an area that we must address. In particular, and Mr. Mead, you wanted to see some of the questions, so we asked to dig in. Students report a low perception of the fairness of the rules at their school, which I did mention to the panorama that most middle schoolers and high schools don't feel like rules are fair, but I will digress. Or how excited their teachers seem to be, and whether the behavior of others helps their learning. If you notice, the last question there, same question that the elementary received. At your school, how much does the behavior of other students hurt or help your learning? So that is a much lower percentage than the elementary. Female students, and Mr. Shanklin, you brought up about gender, female students' perceptions of school climate are 6% lower than their male peers at this age level. So that was interesting. And again, there are so many ways that we can look at this data. I know when I'm on it, I go down the rabbit hole because I'll start looking at things but sometimes we just have to focus on what are the big rocks that we need to be looking at. And then 6th through 12th grade, again, students classified as English language learners' perception of school climate is 6% above the national average. Male students report more positive perceptions across all topic areas. So again, slightly different than the elementary, our 6th through 12th grade males are above the females. And there are differences across grade levels that may be compelling, and we actually discussed this at our meeting last week. 9th grade perception of school safety is quite strong. And we thought, wow, that's really interesting. And in discussions with Panorama, as they were helping with this data analysis, they didn't know that we had separate 9th grade schools. And so our 9th graders feel a different perception because it's smaller, right? That's my belief in that. And when they found out, they said that makes sense because it was definitely an outlier. Interesting information. So I want to share with you what's next. We held a principal data inquiry training with principals and counselors and assistant principals to dig down into their data and write action plans. These will be aligned with their multi-tiered systems of support, that MTSS plans that they're doing. Teachers received access last week. So teachers they received a link. They could click that link. It takes them right to their student data. So they can look and do the same kind of analysis by demographic, by gender, et cetera, and they can drill down and even see how specific students answered questions. We, as Dr. Davis alluded to, we are going to provide continuous training for campuses, leadership teams, and teachers. We are looking right now at what are some social emotional learning resources that are going to meet the needs of our teachers and our leaders. If, as Dr. Goffney spoke about, the 11 schools that received the restorative practices training scored above the district in areas such as professional learning about SEL, which told us they had the tools needed in order to make some really good decisions. We are continuing our intensive PBIS or MTSS cohorts. So those are for how we have systems of support at our campuses and in our classrooms. And then Dr. Davis and Dr. Moore and the team provided a calendar for second semester. Every week, classroom management sessions will be provided for teachers. So on multitude of different topics, and those are going to be available to all of our staff. That concludes this. As Dr. Goffney said, we will be coming back with more information. I did not share that this is baseline. We will be giving this same survey at the end of the year. And so we're talking with leaders about how this isn't right now an evaluation of you, but what will be is what we do with these results and how we want to grow. Just like an achievement, we want to see growth in all areas, from teachers to students.
Great job, Kate. That's a good information and a good
Yes.
start. Good start. Thank you.
Right, thank you. And that concludes my report. I will turn it over to Dr. Charlotte Davis.
Dr. Davis, do you want to go ahead and bring the band and then come back and get your part of it? Okay.
good.
Dr. Davis, I'll let you go ahead and take over the.
Okay.
Fine,
Thank
that
you.
looks
I'll
good.
go, At this point, I'll pass it over to our Executive Director Refugio Rodriguez.
Oh, that looks good.
Good evening, Board,
Good
Dr.
evening.
Goffney, Dr. Chapa. We have here our sample student. He's glad he made it. This is Davis High School, brand new projected or uniform for next year.
Can we get him to come over to the?
Yes,
chair?
absolutely. Come on up.
Thank you.
That's nice.
Yes. So what we have here is a brand new uniform. Davis is the last high school to receive the upgraded uniform. We started with Aldine and we've now made it back to Davis. This uniform represents the newest technology that's available to band uniforms. It's very lightweight. It's made for August in Houston, right? So when we had band uniforms long ago, it was very difficult for the kids to be in full uniform because it's just so hot. But this is a type of material it is wash and wear, but we don't do that. We professionally clean that so that it lasts for a long time. The garment is guaranteed the entire uniform for 10 years. Anything that goes wrong with anything, the company that we've gone with has top-notch service. They absolutely pick up uniforms. We've had a few little glitches here and there. They gladly pick up uniforms and take care of the repairs immediately at no charge because they're under warranty. So our normal rotation is 7 years. So the warranty is more than in effect for the uniform for the life that we use it. What we do is the band directors in the back go through the company and do a complete study of what their colors are and the culture of the school and the community, and they come up with a design that's based just for Davis. So that logo you see on the front is unique just to Davis. The hat represents just one of the portions of the colors that we can do there. It's removable. You can change the colors. The plume is of course comes off. And there's also a plate that goes with it for parades. Where does it go? It goes right there. It's a button, buttons up. And so that's the change. And then, yeah.
Like that.
And again, this is a prototype. The best part of this, or one of the best parts of it, is the process of looking at it and seeing the changes and how unique it is. The principal has looked at this, band directors, of course, and then a small group of students have looked at it because it's real important. Our kids need to buy in that they will wear this for the next 7, 8 years. So, yes.
And do they?
Yes, and so the seniors are kind of upset that they're not going to wear it, but they understand. But they're very excited, the group of students. Okay.
Go ahead.
Turn around one one more time, baby? Let me get a picture of Mr. Davis.
Is it possible that it's worn without the jacket?
No, that's the complete uniform.
Okay.
But it is part of a concert uniform as well, which is a great part of the company. It allows our students to wear a concert uniform that very resembles this. So it's kind of an added bonus that they get a concert uniform for when they perform on stage.
And does the company guarantee the colors as well?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the new things, just so you know, is called dye sublimation. Sorry, I know I put that microphone. But all of this is, part of it is painted. So that's the brand new technology. It used to be everything was sewn on. And so that limited the colors, it limited what could be done with the uniform. But now, literally, you could take anything in any image and put it onto that uniform. So that's part of the uniform. That's new, and it's new technology.
Very nice.
And the pants are cut to the way students like to wear them. You know, they go all the way up to the top. They're bibs. They're called bibs, so they're never going to fall off. They're never. I mean, that's important. But so it's cut, like I said, to what students like to wear and want to wear. They're proud of their uniform.
Not the low riders.
No, sir. No, sir. Yeah. Yeah.
Where,
They're high riders, but they're not so tight that, yeah. So they're cut just the right thing. And also, each student is fitted individually. So they get a custom set of fittings for every student. And then the company it's literally many years of doing this, no approximate sizes. And so they estimate on the lower side and the higher side. So we're set for years to come on the sizes. And anything that's changed or needs to be done, they keep the pattern of this uniform, and they can make changes as needed in the future.
What are you said that they will fix anything that goes wrong. Other than wear and tear, what would they fix?
Sometimes it may, like, for example, percussionists they make them special so that they wear their harness on the inside, but the drums sometimes may wear it down. Tuba players, when they put the sousaphone, you know, it can wear. That's the only thing I've ever seen is like a little frame. But like I said, we saw that with MacArthur on one or two uniforms, and it was the tuba players. But they picked up the uniform right away, looked at it, and replaced what needed to be replaced.
he could wear the bib. He could wear the bib with, don't they normally have their T-shirts?
Their T-shirts, yes. You want to take it off so they can see the bib. So.
Yeah.
And these are the gauntlets that are, again, customized to the uniform.
So for less formal, like
Yes.
when they're sitting in the stands
Yes.
playing during the game.
Yes.
Or going on.
Yeah, so that doesn't look bad. It's not a
No.
bad look. And again, it's fitted to the student, so they're always going to have the best look possible.
He's one of our handsome students. He looks like a little model.
I think I may have asked this question
Yes,
before, but given that we have a 7-year rotation and a 10-year guarantee, I mean, just the extension of the rotation to 8 years instead of 7
Yes,
would still give us plenty of wiggle room.
yes. And we talked about it before. The biggest thing is the fashion. So we don't ever want to look dated, and I understand the fiscal responsibility, but so the last time, Davis is the brand new uniform. It was the newest uniform that there was, and the colors have now changed to black. The sash that hangs on the left is now the thing. So the biggest thing is fashion. So we kind of approximate that there's a 8 or 9 year cycle of uniforms and the way they change.
So if we did get into a financial pinch,
Yes.
that we could go on a particular year, whoever was next could go 8
Yeah.
years.
And we did with Davis, we waited. And so now the best part of it is that it has a black base, which says professional concert attire. And it's, again, this is applicable with a different top on the concert stage and on the field. But it's got a classic look that won't date as much. Some school districts have gone with this, looks flashy right away, but a year or two later, it's completely out of fashion, but they're stuck with it. So we're very blessed and lucky to have, a 7 or 8 year rotation as needed. But this uniform is classic. It'll stay relevant for a long period of time. Yes.
I know, I think we've asked this before, but I forgot the answer. What do we do with the unused or the old uniforms?
They're auctioned. They're auctioned off to other school districts.
I have a question.
Yes.
You start off with your band this year, and then next year you don't have the same number of children. Are they changing size?
Yes.
How do we handle that?
Yes, sir. So we overestimate. So we are asking for 200 or 250 to accommodate the growth. We expect that the Davis Band program will grow to 200, possibly 250. So we're accommodating that growth.
Okay.
And we also, again, if we have smaller sizes, the company knows to make certain uniforms that are going to be smaller, and then to make uniforms that are going to be larger for the kids that come in. And the pants have a special hem that's adjustable with a button, so there's no need to hem it. If the student is that much taller but the same waist, they just take the hem and snap it, and so it's automatically hemmed. Yeah, and the construction is excellent. I've watched this company make their uniforms for several years. They're guaranteed for 10 years. That's unrivaled. And what they do to provide our programs, so there's the snaps in the sleeves and in the pants of the hem.
Okay. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So that's how they know, that you'll get taller students or shorter students, but yeah. And there's no need to cut. We'll never cut them. They'll just be hemmed and fit that way.
And if the child goes out of that adjustment, you just give them one of the other uniforms that you bought as an extra.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And again, the company saves the mold. They've had the pattern. They'll keep it for the life of the uniform. There'll never be a time where we can't go back and say, we have this extraordinary student, on either side. Absolutely, they'll make it right on the spot. And they can crank out a uniform in, 2-3 days.
And speaking of our extraordinary students, someone like me who's a little bit more plump and plush, how comfortable are our bigger students in these uniforms? Are those comfortable?
Absolutely. Great question. Because we do have different students of different sizes. The black kind of slims it down. It's got this tapered look that makes students look, it's very flattering. I think I'm going to ask for this kind of uniform for myself. Yes, it's a very stretchable material, and that's the new part of the uniforms. They're not that thick wool that's just kind of just sits there, right? It doesn't feel constricted at all. He looks really good because he's young and thin, but yes. But, all the other students, I can tell you, we look at that and we study that absolutely because we want all our students to feel comfortable. But it's a very flattering cut. It'll slim down the students. It doesn't, it's not tight in the wrong places. It's fit very well for all sizes. Great question, yes.
For someone like me who's not fashion conscious at all,
Yes, sir.
how would I know that a band uniform is dated?
Oh,
I mean, but no, understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We're selling our band uniforms
Mhm.
to other school districts. So are we going to go to a parade and say, that's our old uniform that's dated versus something like that?
I think,
just don't know.
what you'll find is that some school districts will sell too much on the unique color. And so that's very hard to resell. It's like a car, you're really in love with a green car. It's not going to have a great resale value because not too many people like green. So we go with the basic black and then put the flash here in the color. So somebody could buy those pants and they'd be fine. You wouldn't know any difference. So that's part of it. But then I think is when people pick very specific things and it ties them to that one thing. When I was in high school, I wore ruffles. And so that was a hot trend for about a year. And so then we were stuck with ruffles for a while. So, and it was I'm not putting it down, but it was ruffles and the shirt opened. And so, I mean, if you were trim and nice, it looked good. If not, well, it didn't look as good, but yeah. So we all remember ruffles. I tuxedo ruffles. And so that was the uniform. It was hot for like 2 or 3 years, but this one will be, I mean, for many years to come. It's a
Well, it
very
looks
unique
nice.
color
Very
and
nice.
design.
And the reason that I'm saying is building on Dr. Garcia's question, if for some reason down the road, we have to extend to 8 years to 9 years, I still don't want our students to look dated.
No, no. I think the uniqueness of the design will keep it long time. I mean, it's unique. No one else has that. And so it's made customized. They take the school colors, they take the director's opinions, and they build the design. They help build the design. It's all formatted on a computer, and it comes out unique.
And our director is pleased with the design for competition, because I know like the plume, we want it tall, so our kids look tall when they're marching, and everything to look clean when they're competing, because it's
Yes.
all about our.
The clean, yes, absolutely. And so that plume will make our students look taller and leaner, and the long pants make them look like they have.
And everything's sharp, and so,
Yes.
yeah. So it looks good when you have 200 out there from
Yes,
performance standpoint.
yes.
Good deal. Thank you for giving up your evening with us. You're a handsome young man.
Thank you.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, members, I have to say that I really appreciate the questions and the concern. Seeing our students perform at mini marching band competitions, you can truly see that our students stand out.
Yes.
You can, Mr. Shanklin, you can see the bands that don't put the time and attention, and they do look dated. And I can tell you that our students surely represent us as a top-notch school district. In fact, that these are all 6A high school marching bands. We really do show that our students, we provide the very best for our students. So, and just note to self, anyone have a green card? I know I'm stuck with my green card for a long time. It's kind of sad. But thank you very much, board members.
Thank you, Todd.
That concludes my agenda.
Mr. Shanklin, to your question, those who are buying them are typically small schools. At 6A, there are no hand-me-downs. There are no 6A districts who are buying.
No.
They are top-notch at 6A. So coming from small school, if you're in a budget crisis.
That would be nice for them.
It would be nice.
Yeah.
A 6A is older would be nicer for a 1A or 2A in many cases.
Okay. Now we'll go back to Dr. Charlotte Davis, our Student Support Services.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Meade. Mr. Meade, board members, Dr. Goffney, Dr. Chopper. My agenda is in the addendum section and starts on page 284 with one item for consent agenda, and that's approval of memorandum of agreement with University of Houston. We have a grant for year 3 of the Consistency Management and Cooperative Discipline. That's a social and emotional learning program, and that will be at Lewis Middle School. And Lewis Middle School is the school in the 3rd year of that program. So we are encouraged and look forward to them completing the year 3 of that program. Any questions about that?
Any questions?
No, I know, I remember, and you've said this is the 3rd year.
3rd year, yes, ma'am.
So it is a grant.
Yes, ma'am.
Organized by the university, I would imagine, and we are collaborating.
Yes.
I think an important thing to consider is what we're talking about now, because it's a 3-year program, we should have data about about the effectiveness of this.
Right, and
So
Dr.
as-
Freiberg with University of Houston, they do keep data and look at from when they started and the end of the school year as far as the impact of the program.
And so what is the impact? I guess I'm asking the question because we have 3, this is 2 years already. Is the impact worthy of course, at this late date, we're at a place where we almost need to accept the opportunity, but given that we have data, are we looking at the data and comparing Lewis Middle School's outcomes to the other middle school outcomes to know if this in fact is making the kind of difference that it should make at this amount of money?
Yes, and we have seen some improvement in their overall campus climate, their discipline. There's still work to do, but because this was a program that was already started a couple of years ago, it was Lewis that was continuing in the third year.
So
So
is it
we
a-
can share some, I can pull and bring some data to share with
Kind of speak to it. It was one of the, it was an expensive
you.
endeavor.
Right.
And so we have eliminated the other schools based on the fact that we've got to build some capacity within our district in order to be able to have better outcomes for the same amount of money. And so we're down to one. What we can tell you about Lewis specifically is we cannot tie it to this. What we've done, and Mabel can speak to this, is we have changed the leader, and we're very pleased with all the things that they're doing. However, this is our final obligation to that grant that we inherited, if I can just speak candidly.
Right.
And that's exactly where I was going. If we have a uniform approach that we are.
That's what we're creating, and not some
Right.
one-offs. Right. And so, was a part of a research thing, and I mean, I clutched my pearls at the amount that we were investing, and then not necessarily seeing what we needed to see. And so, what we've eliminated, and Don can also speak to this, and what we've been trying to convey is we're not allowing people to come in and just do research and conduct that research and then walk out.
Right.
We're trying to build a system of support so that we can sustain it when the grant runs out and all of those different things. So we have a lot of university partners that Katie and I have been meeting with and explaining that to. They've been getting hit or miss improvements, but we're unable to continue it or sustain it because we don't have complete buy-in from the district. And they're not pushing our strategic plan, they're pushing their own. And so that's just one example of it. We could think of others. But I think Lewis specifically, Mabel, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, we've made lots of changes at Lewis in the past year, this past school year. And so we're seeing a decrease in discipline referrals. We're seeing a change in environment and attitude. So we're very happy with that. But we didn't see that immediately by using this other program. And there's all kind of factors we could use there. But we are seeing changes now. But I would, I'd be real hesitant about saying it's because of this program. We've put a lot of things in place to make those
Especially
changes.
Given the data that Katie shared with us, then there's an opportunity to do some comparison of the middle school outcomes.
Right.
And if there is, I mean, very little difference between Lewis and the others, then that's one indicator of.
Yes.
And we'll be following that closely this final year, which this, at some point, who can speak to it? How many campuses that we have involved in this 10 or 11 campuses?
We had, I think, 2 middle schools.
Right, but 11, I think there were
We had elementary
11
schools.
overall.
Yeah, we had elementary schools participating also. And I don't know the exact totals, so I thought there were only 7 as a part of that. And it could have been more, but I know that there were at least
It started
7.
smaller than we added.
Right.
Campuses were added as part of the program.
And reconfiguration. So now we're down to that one. Yeah.
So the information that we got a moment ago from you on the 7th, the middle schools, okay? You took all the middle schools.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Now maybe I'm seeing what Ms. Garcia said, but if you now took
Lewis.
Lewis and compared it to what we have, would Lewis be better than the average of the others? We don't know that yet.
I could easily look that up. But I think that as Dr. Davis and Ms. Holt said, that I don't know if we can attribute it necessarily to CMCD or if that would be attributed to their new leader. And so what I'd be interested is now looking at Lewis and then seeing at the end of the year if there has been a change with this intensive support that they're getting.
Then we would know if this was worth.
Yes.
Yeah, one factor, yeah.
But we did do an evaluation of CMCD before we discontinued it at the other campuses. And there
Yes.
was no conclusive evidence that it was.
No,
permeating.
Dr. Freiberg did share with us at the end of the year last year data from each of the campuses. And based on that data, we did not believe that it was something that had made a large impact
Statistically
on the campuses for the cost that we were
So
doing.
we're down to the final campus.
Right, and we focus.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, but Because
focused
look-
on,
looking at this contract, it reads here that year 3 is designed to move the expertise of the CMCD coaches to the teachers and administration. I am curious now, and maybe I should have paid more attention to it before, what were year 1 and 2 designed?
so they start with implementing kind of what we're doing with MTSS and PBIS. They come in, introduce some strategies, try and get it caught on school-wide, but then they start to where they work with faculty, different faculty members to be the experts, so to speak, to be able to move the program from year to year to year to strengthen it and grow it.
And we didn't see that growth in the other schools.
No, looking at the data, when we looked at it, there were some good outcomes, but not the impact, not the massive for when you're spending the money we were investing. So we decided to try and make more of a district-wide impact with our director of social and emotional learning and our other concentrated and focused efforts. But we did not see the impact that we needed to see for the investment that we were making in the program.
Okay, and just looking at this, the investment we're making this year is a little over $61,000.
Right, and that's from a grant.
All right.
That's the year 3.
Are we still going to be getting that grant money to do something else with?
This will end this program, period.
Okay, and it's something that this board has brought up before, the data that is collected from that. Is it ours? Can we manipulate it, or does it go to someone else now?
The data from CMC?
Well, from a lot of the programs we have, we have people coming and using us as guinea pigs.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
being intentional about our partners too. So.
Yeah.
But it is our data.
It is it's our data, but we are, like Dr. Goffney said, intentional now. We're focused on making sure groups are not wanting to come in and partner and just use us for research and that kind of thing, that there's some significance in the program that they're bringing to us.
So, Mr. Bates, because of our demographics, being Black, brown, students of poverty, urban, universities can write grants and get lots of money. And they can have their own goals, and they come in, and of course, all money, what I've learned in my experience, is not necessarily good money if it's not tied to our strategic priorities. And so when you have one-offs like that, it's hard to even get buy-in. The whole district knows we're focusing on social and emotional learning, so there's an awareness. But when you just turn our campuses to university partners, you're just not going to see the level of success that you'll see if we'll build a system. So,
Any other questions? Okay.
Go ahead, Charlotte.
The other my other agendas start on page 291 with the monthly, and it's for informational purposes, is the police activity report. Are there any questions regarding the police activity report? And on page 295 is the monthly discipline report. And that's for your information. And we're continuing to see positive outcomes with that. Any questions?
No questions.
If there are no questions, that concludes my agenda, Mr. Mead. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Okay, now we'll begin. Dr. Dawn Ayers. No, I'm ready. Sorry, Charlotte. Yeah. Strategic initiatives.
Good evening, Mr. Mead, Dr. Goffney, Dr. Chapa, members of the board. I do not have any items this month.
I looked across my page and I saw that the superintendent was trying to tell me all along.
I heard it down there.
You heard it, okay. Okay, then we'll go to Dr. Javier Villarreal, Human Resources. You have something to talk about, don't you?
Good evening, President Mead, Dr. Goffney, Dr. Chapa, board. The HR agenda for this month starts on page 38. And on the agenda, as you can see, we have the first 4 are standard reports, and then we do have a 5th one, which is our CTE teaching permits. And then, as you can see, we have some executive session items. So the first board item starts on page 40, and that's our monthly resources personnel report. As you can see on there, since last month, we've had 5 resignations and 2 retirements. Are there any questions regarding this monthly resources personnel report?
So you do have exit interviews with these people that have resigned?
Yes, we do.
You know, maybe in executive session, we can ask the question.
Okay. The next board item is on page 42, and that's our vacancy list. And the vacancy list also follow them, and they start on page 44 for the teaching staff or professional staff, and on page 49 for the paraprofessionals. And as of December 4th, we have a total of 135 teaching vacancies and 90 paraprofessional vacancies. Are there any questions regarding the vacancy
Is that
list?
about where we were last month?
We were, I think, 139 last month, but keep in mind that, you know, in November and December, it's not peak hiring season because those that have.
Already have jobs.
Yeah, and so we're hoping to, we actually have some of these that are going to be filled with December graduates. So it should be going down next month. Next board item is on page 53, and that's our monthly personnel assignments and recommendations. And that's a list of new employees that we've hired since last month. Then on page 55 is our monthly approved staff assignments, which you'll be meeting 6 individuals tomorrow evening that are going to be recognized, you know, from our director of benefits to an appointment of director of transportation and several assistant principals. And then the last board item is on page 57. And, you know, as a district of innovation, you know, we've hired 2 teachers, both at Nimitz actually, one to do the BCIS accounting and one to do pharmacy tech, who aren't certified teachers, but through the district of innovation, we are issuing them a permit. Wanted to make y'all aware of that. Are there any questions?
Yes, how many of the student teachers did we have that came on board with the district?
From this semester, I believe, and I don't want to misspeak, but from the last count, I think it was 26 or 28 that are going to come on board in December.
That'll bring that 135 down then, huh?
Yes, ma'am. And then from, as I recall from the spring, I'm not sure the number, but of the percentage, it was 82% that we were able to retain of our student teachers. Mr. Mead, that concludes the HR agenda.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, Dr. Tamika Alfred Stevens.
Good
Are you
evening.
ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Good evening, Mr. Mead, Dr. Goffney, Dr. Chapa, and members of the board. My agenda begins on page 59. And it begins with the first item we are requesting approval of, which is our standard ratification of the check registers for this month. Then beginning on page 61, there are a series of bids that we are requesting your approval of. Are there any questions on any of the bids?
Board?
I just have a clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
Looking at page 61.
Page 61?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
And right underneath the table is the listing of vendors previously awarded.
I'm on page 61, but I actually see my cover sheet as page 61.
I do too.
That's ratification of the check
On a
register.
different page. I looked at the, let me find it. Tell me the page. Let me tell you what's on it.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you tell me the page. I'm probably looking at the first issue. It's the instructional supplies, materials and equipment.
Instructional supplies, that begins on page 67.
Let me look on
Yes, ma'am. The instructional supplies, materials, and equipment,
at the end of that.
the previously awarded vendors.
Yes, I just wanted clarification. It doesn't say, I'm assuming that what you're saying there is that you will include the previously awarded ones.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Dr. Garcia.
Just clarify what that means.
That means that the vendors that are listed there, starting with Allen Lohman, doing business as Lohman Consulting, that particular vendor has already applied or submitted to be a vendor, an approved vendor. And so when these are reoccurring bids that we open monthly. And so they already have been awarded and exist on our approved bid listing, but they applied again. And so we did not want to include them on a list for you all to approve this month because they are already an approved vendor. So what happens is we'll list everybody that applied and let you know that this is a previously awarded vendor. So there's no need for you all to approve them again because they already exist on an approved board response for proposal.
That's vendors previously awarded and approved.
By the board, yes, ma'am. That's what that section means. Mhm. Are there any other questions about the bids for this month? If there are no questions, I would like to move to page 84, which is where we have the approval of contracts and purchases over 50,000. Are there any questions about that item? And that's the listing for this month. If there are no questions, on page 86, there is a change. We are requesting approval for this month's general fund budget amendment. For the past couple of months, as you know, we've had discussions about our athletic competition sites. And last month, as we were closing out fiscal year 19, we talked about some of the unexpected funds that we had received due to the property values audits that were conducted, funds that we did not spend in 18-19, just to name a few. So we are requesting for this month, which is different from previous months, to increase our overall budget so that we can start with the Davis Athletic Competition site. So that's why you see a change in the bottom line on the budget for this month.
So it's going from fund balance to the
Yes, ma'am.
general fund.
To the general fund, and it's under Function 81 because it's going to be considered a capital project, but know that this will directly benefit students. So it's one of those coding things, Mr. Bates, that we talked about in your training, how we have to code everything a certain way, but definitely benefiting our students here in Aldine.
That is coming out of fund balance.
Yes, sir.
One time.
And as of today, our budget expenditures are trending below where we anticipated we'd be spending. And so that's still a good thing as well. So we anticipate that at the end of this school year, this fiscal year, we will not spend all of our funds as we did this year. And so any unused funds, remember, goes back into our fund balance.
Do you have a sort of a guesstimate of what that would be yet? You don't know.
Not at this time. It's still early. We're trying to close out this first semester, but in the informational items that is where we show what our monthly expenditures have been. The next item we are requesting your approval of is on page 88, another standard report if we have it, which are monthly tax office refunds. These are taxpayers that submitted payments, either overpayments or a few of them didn't owe anything and still made a payment somehow, some way. And so they have requested to be reimbursed. And of course, we are requesting your approval to reimburse these taxpayers. And then on page 91, we have our approval of the Memorandum of Understanding for our Head Start program. As you know, the district has been in a partnership with Avance. We have been the delegate agency for our Head Start program. And we are coming up on another 5-year phase of the Head Start program. And each year we bring the Memorandum of Understanding back to the board and request approval to continue year after year. And that's what this agreement is stating. We also have the Early Head Start expansion funding, which is for our students or our babies, the infants that are at Hall specifically. So that's an extension of the Head Start program. We know that early literacy is important, and the sooner we can get them and start educating them, the better opportunities they will have. So these Head Start opportunities are great opportunities for our families and our kids, our students.
How many children do we have in that program at Hall?
120. And in our Head Start program, 540. Yes, sir.
So then the other costs, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong page, I know. But I'm looking at the impact of the early Head Start. There's an impact of expected outcome of for 16 early Head Start enrollment opportunities.
Let me get to that page, Dr. Garcia.
I'm looking at the preliminary.
The expansion funding page. So I'm going to go to page 161. I believe that's the page you're referring to.
So there's a difference in the number that you gave of the early Head Start and the 16 here. So I'm assuming then the cost is the local cost?
No. Let me restate. The total Head Start program is 540. There are about 120 kids at each of the Head Start programs. You're correct. Early Head Start is just for Hall, where we have 16 infants that are being, I said 120 originally, but I was speaking of Head Start itself.
So we only provide the service to the number that we are funded for.
For Hall.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Early Head Start is
Early Head Start
only.
is only at Hall, and it's 16.
Okay.
Yes, that's the clarifying piece I need to make certain.
I had
I'm
to
clear on.
understand that too when I went to go visit. I thought, so we only do early Head Start for Hall, and those are the only students we do that for.
Those are the only students for that particular grant program.
How do they qualify for that?
Good question.
For our early Head Start, so originally we looked at the opportunity to expand our Head Start into early Head Start because there was an additional funding opportunity. And so based on the allotment that we were given, we came up with how many infants could we support based on that allotment. And that's how we came up with the 16 seats, because we could support 16 seats and the staffing and all other supplies and equipment needed with that $340,000 allocation. And so based on, once we received the allocation amount and determined the estimate of how much it would cost to service an infant, we came up with that amount. And then after that, the Molly Fuller over at our Head Start Center worked with the campus, the principal at Hall, to offer that opportunity to our students who are at Hall. And so that's how we have decided that Hall was the campus for it.
Wendy, I think her question is, if you had 20 or 25 applicants, how do you determine the 16?
Sure, and I can't answer that question off the top of my head. I'll have to go back and bring that back to you, Ms. Avalos. I don't want to misspeak. If we had 20 applicants and now we're down to 16, how we came up with that 16, but I know it starts with the funding allocation. And then based on that funding allocation, we have to determine how many can we support with that allocation.
I think from our informal conversations, it's almost first come, first serve and priority, and it's
It's not a disability of any kind, or?
It's not a disability. It's not a disability.
That's early child. That's a different program but through special ed if it's a disability.
Are these children,
Early
of the
childhood.
kids, are these the kids of
Of the
the children
students
that go
who
into
attend
Hall, the
Hall.
16?
Yes.
So what does the other, was that there 24, what happened to the other children?
When you say 24, there's only 16.
16?
We have 16 seats.
16
And I
seats.
believe it's first come, first serve.
Okay, I was just,
And
when I-
then priority.
yeah, I was just thinking if
They're on a
there,
waiting
if there are
list.
more,
Waiting.
They're on a waiting list.
Okay, everybody, we have to talk one at a time, so we're making a record so that everyone's voice can be heard. Thank you.
so we may have more students that have more kids, but out of those students, only 16 can go there.
Because that's what the funding will allow for. And we have to also take into consideration the capacity of the building. Because remember, there's already an existing employee child care program that's there. So we have to take that in consideration. into consideration, along with what capacity do we have to service how many kids there? And 16 is the number at this time.
And it's similar to the employee daycare, it's first come, first serve as well.
Right, and there's a waiting list for that sometimes too. I hope that answers your question, but I will double check and report back. Oh, I can bring it back on, report on board communications and update, Ms. Garcia. Ms. Avalos. I'm looking at Ms. Avalos and saying Ms. Garcia. Okay, the next items are informational items, which begin on page 169. And those are my standard reports as it relates to student enrollment, our monthly tax office report, and our budget reports. Are there any questions about any of the informational reports that are there?
I did have a question about the large deficit in the, not deficit, I don't want to call it a deficit, but it's the refunds.
The refunds, we had monthly refunds under the consent agenda. Are you talking about something different from that, Dr. Garcia?
You know, it was it's a large amount, the red number.
Yes, so on our monthly tax office report, that's what you're referencing. So we have historically continued to track the amount of prior year refunds that we issue. And remember, we started tracking that because we had a year where we had to pay over $6 million in prior year refunds. And so since then, we've been tracking that number, Dr. Garcia. So to date, that number is just over $3.2 million. And that number is on the report that's on page 171.
Are you concerned about that?
We did budget for prior year refunds again. Actually, I'm happy to see that number because in the prior years, that number has been 5.8 million, 6 million. So over the past 2 years, at this time of the year, that number was significantly higher. So it is trending lower in comparison to the last 2 years. So, but we do budget for prior year refunds in our budget projections so that we are not caught off guard with having to pay back large sums of money.
So there's a stabilization, it appears, on the valuations and
Right. Well, I think that in the prior 2 years, we had some property value litigation that had been tied up for a number of years. And some of those settlements came, it was from 2011, 2013, and those settlements hit us hard in 2017 and 2018, which is also around the time there was Harvey. So with that being said, I do think that the taxable values are starting to stabilize a bit. So that $3.2 million is not alarming for us. It's actually a happy surprise. It seems like a lot, but when we've been paying back over $6 million, so anyway, we're watching that number and it's trending below where it has been in comparison to the prior 2 years. Mm-hmm. Are there any more questions about any of the informational items?
No questions.
If there are no questions, that concludes my report for tonight.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Shalia Reed, Communications.
Mr. Mead, Dr. Chapa, Dr. Goffney, other board members. My agenda begins on page 189. And these are the normal reports and presentations for the month. I just want to call out a few things. One, I appreciate you all for being here today for your updated board picture. We will get those printed as soon as possible and get it posted out here in the foyer and placed around the district and other locations and posted on the web. Additionally, I've heard your comments. I will reach out to each one of you to make sure which photo you want to use at MOC or any other locations so that we can make sure we have the one you are most interested in. Also want to thank you for being at the namesake luncheon. We received some excellent feedback from the event. We're starting to get more and more calls. Lots of principals who are interested in getting to know their namesakes, who many of them have not interacted with. And so we want to make that an annual event and something that we continue to do. Just today, we learned something new every day. Dr. Alfred Stevens, we learned that Mr. A.W. Jones's daughter works in your department. Did you know that? We didn't know. So we found that out today. And so things like that, good connections are good to know. You're right, daughter-in-law. The calendar of events is listed. There are no changes, and if there are, just as always, they'll be noted in the board communications. I want to make mention that on the monthly media update, today we had media at Goodman Elementary School for good things, something good. They had a live museum, and so Channel 13 came out, and so Mike went over there and was able to help interact and get the students engaged. They were excited. It was a live museum. I don't know if you've ever been to those. It's where you touch them and then the student comes alive and tells you all the history and knowledge. So that was exciting. Tomorrow at the board meeting, we will recognize the Optimist Club for their support for across the district for everything that they've done to help our families, in addition to the support that they are providing for the foundation's Wizards versus the Aldine All-Stars, which is on January 22nd. So that's one of our special acknowledgments. Everything else is standard. And that's all I have, Mr. Mead.
I do have a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
The events, I know that we have, many of us are very interested in activities that are in the district. We have a new board member I know that's going to be at just about everything you invite us to. Was there a Be an Angel board meeting along with the special needs students day?
Oh, through special education? Be an Angel. Yeah, so Be an Angel is a partner that we've worked with annually, and I believe this time every year there is a annual event. Dr. Davis?
I asked because I believe it's they have a board meeting in conjunction with that event, and it's always very nice to thank them. And I just wondered if that had occurred already, because it happens at the beginning of December, and I think the event occurred. The children's event occurred, and they have their board meeting at the same time, and I don't know.
Yes, the children's event did occur.
I'm not familiar with the board meeting, whether they had a board meeting. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I do know that the event occurred last week, but like Dr. Davis, I'm not aware of their actual board meeting, if it happened at the same time.
And then the other thing that I'm very curious about is that I know that when we come back from the winter break, we're going to be right in the middle of a recruitment period for the 2021 academic year. So I'm very interested to know about the strategy for assisting not only the magnet type settings that we have, but any of the schools, so that we are in very direct competition, as we've talked about before, for the schools that are really marketing and getting to our parents before we do.
Yes, ma'am. So I feel really loud, but the good news, well, the bad news was that our recruitment period, it never stopped. So it actually, went back further into the school year. So it just doesn't kick off then. But we know that IDEA and Yes Prep are moving into our district. We have already started working on a marketing plan, and we've identified 4 schools that are of ultimate focus, and that would be Spence, Conley, Reed, and it is Hinojosa. Spence and Conley, as they are within 2 to 3 miles of IDEA, and then Reed and Hinojosa are very close to the new Yes that will be for elementary schools. I have I'm finalizing a marketing plan and plan to kind of run it through some of my colleagues first before presenting it to CORE in January. In fact, I think Dr. Alfred Stevens is on the agenda for January 6th to have a conversation about what we do next. Part of that marketing plan includes ensuring that the communication methods for each of those schools are improved. So for example, we know that Spence has some work to do on their website. And so giving intense focus, which could be from an outside vendor, to increase the information that's on their website so that those who may have questions about the programs, the administrators at their campus can find it quickly. It would also include I'm going to call it a proud to be a Spence person kind of plan that would say, if you're a parent already or if you're a student, we would give you those yard signs you can put in your yard so that you feel connected to the school. But we also know that small communication plan has to be anchored by a larger district awareness plan. And I believe we've talked about billboards before, we've talked about social media. And so all of those things are built into a much larger campaign. What my target is that at the state of the district, that's really our first opportunity to say, hey, business partners, community members, parents, principals, here is why you love Aldine. Here's all the things that you should know we're doing great. And then the next phase would be those identifiable things, like I mentioned, the billboard, the social media things, and then the intense focus at those schools. Happy to share that, and if possible, Dr. Goffney, I can bring it in January.
Absolutely, and there's so many different things connecting to that. We'll continue with our pre-K and K roundup. We started those last year, and we'll be doing those in the spring. We have our pre-K festival that, I mean, it's a highlight and is an exemplar for the rest of the region. And what it does is, because a lot of our, the charter schools are recognizing they're starting at pre-K. And so if we can get them in and get quality experience, then we're going to be better off. In addition, we're excited about getting awareness about the current choices that we have and engaging our parents to see what are some different choices that we can bring. And you'll be hearing from our Chief Transformation Officer as it relates to that. And meanwhile, we're also, and you don't think this has, you're like, okay, how does that deal with marketing? But we're going to do a universal screener of all of our second graders and start identifying giftedness in all of our students so that our parents recognize that we are going to be focused on ensuring that they reach their fullest potential. And so I think as we start talking about how we are the best choice and how we're going to help their children become the best that they can be, it's going to be the better. So we're going to do the communication piece and all those different things, but we're going to enhance our system at the elementary level to be able to meet the needs of our primary students. We have a great group of primary principals who are focused and ready to go. And then, of course, we've got to build up the elementary because that's where they're attacking us from, the elementary level.
I think one of the biggest differences, and we've all seen it, is that the marketing for the charters in terms of their budget is
it's huge. Yes,
much larger than ours. So the question for me, understand the elementary. So let's think of the high school, for example, the career and technical education, the P-TECH, the magnet opportunities, Victory Early College, Carver, those sorts of things. Do those particular schools or any of the schools have any marketing amount in the budget that they receive? Is it designated that way, or do they really rely on, as Shalea said a while ago, Spence is working, or the technology officer at Spence is working, and they develop their own website? But is there, in addition to the 4 that she mentioned, do these particular campuses, P-TECH, for example, who is just brand new, developing its own things, do they have their own amount of money, or are they depending on the communications office to develop the things for them, or how?
So this is the thing for our district. We can't have these siloed approaches,
right?
And so it's got to be a strategic approach. And so with direction and some expectations, I don't mind providing some type of resources and some guidance, but otherwise just having everyone go out and do their own thing. I think that the best that we've seen is, as small as her department is, I don't know if you can tell, if you go on the website, it looks a whole lot better. If you go to social media, they're telling the stories and getting the information out. We know, I think Del Pilar and Ybarra are the best at getting the word out about their choices and opportunities at their schools. And I also know that our numbers at middle school are bursting at the seams and our high school numbers are good. It's the elementary level where there's the concern. And if there's a direction we want to go to in the future, once we get some expectations in place where we have some marketing direction, because what happens is what some people think is marketing, it's not.
Well, that's why I guess I would ask, was asking the question because there's, from my perspective, needs to be that bigger, broader support that they can go to and not have to, I mean, their expertise at the schools is teaching.
Yes, ma'am. And so as Dr. Goffney alluded to, just this morning, where's Mr. Lindeman? Behind me, Mr. Lindeman sent me an email about CTE Blanson because they have some programs that are low and would like to get, I think he said in quotes, marketing and quotes, branding support. And so we will reach out, which we've been doing from the beginning, but there will be a challenge in terms of like how far we're stretched. And so I think that there's some opportunity for support from the district level because, as you mentioned, it's becoming bigger than just a school sending out a flyer. You know, there has to be some in-depth work in terms of who's the target market, and that's just not saying every 8th grader. You got to go a little deeper and deeper and deeper, and that becomes a challenge. As you mentioned, the school's job is to teach. So where do we provide that support? And then at the same time, you know, the truth is, once someone hears it works, then they're calling. So his other folks over at Eisenhower reached out and said, we need some support building up our IB program. And Avalos is knocking at the door, and and Magnet is calling every day. And so we're doing the best we can to support them all. But at the end of the day, you know, it's about word of mouth and making sure that the students have the best experience. So we're trying to, you know, kind of piece it together until, as Dr. Goffney mentioned, we come up with a bigger plan for those programs like the Magnet office and, you know, the choice school so that it's all consistent.
And Dr. Garcia, I want to just add to that. I think Shali's downplaying it slightly. I've seen a tremendous improvement in the coordination of our marketing and our communication this year. In the past, it's been each campus with a small budget, scraping money together, doing something, trying to market and advertise themselves, and they're, just as you said, they're not trained in that area. So Shalia's department has done a great job of reining that in and putting out a concerted effort to have consistency.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. They have plenty of.
So tremendous improvement in that area. I think we've got growth because as we've got competition externally, now we have competition internally too. And so that's a real interesting dynamic.
Perhaps the most important too, though, that we haven't talked about publicly as much, but we've got to work on customer service.
Right.
We see the marketing piece,
That's right.
but the fact that our competitors, they don't hesitate to go to parents. They don't hesitate to tell them that you're going to have the best experience here.
Right.
And so many times we just got to make sure there's some indication from our stakeholders that the level of customer service that's received and the training that our front office staff, our frontline people, making sure that they reflect our communities and can communicate in a way that our students want their parents feel good about attending the campus. So sometimes it's not even the teacher, it's not even the principal, it's just making sure we have the best front office staff.
May I share? What about a task force? Coming up with a task force that they could go one-on-one with the people. I know that you know, like you said, frontline when they call, that kind of thing. But I mean, whatever group you decide to form, to go out and actually step out of your comfort zone.
And we've talked about.
I know they have them. I mean, I know charter schools have them. Yeah. That's why they're doing so well.
We've talked about going out to the homes and knocking on doors and having events and different things of that nature. And she has for communications department.
We have campus communicators that we work with monthly, and they often call us daily to say, here's what we want to promote, here's a story, and we're giving them guidance. And also our principals they're doing some heavy lifting too. They're going to campus, they're going to communities, they're going to apartment complexes. But at the end of the day, I think we have to help them and give them guidance on what they need to say and do.
But we also want to have somebody talk to the ones that are already with us.
That's right.
So they don't.
Oh, yes, to the parents.
Retain them.
Yes, ma'am.
Or else, if you don't get that one-on-one communication with the parents, they're going to start scouting.
It's true.
That's true.
Yeah, and if you look in our strategic plan in community engagement and outreach, it's not just about outreach, it's about engaging them to build pride. And so if people feel connected to a school, if they feel connected to the district, there's no need for them to answer the call from IDEA. And so there is competition, but we also have to make sure we're taking care of our families so that so when the folks come knocking, they say thank you, but no thank you. So that's where the customer service comes in. That's also where the school pride. That's also where the sharing of the programs that we have, and also the successes and storytelling of the district. And so those are things that we're working on and revamping, and it's working. People are understanding why they love their school without even knowing, this is what I'm here for. This is why I'm staying.
The high schools, the choice schools have also been having meetings as a group with communications office throughout this year. I think they're all very in alignment that everybody has their unique success stories and what they excel in, and they're all promoting that. Where we're running into a little bit of issues is some of the programs like at CTE. I don't even know what they are to be able to know if I want to go and do it. So letting an 8th grader know and a parent know, that's what we're really focused on, is really explaining those things. So they're at the middle schools, they're at the middle school events, they're really out in the public. And like Dr. Goffney says, the best promotion is an A or a B school and really touting your successes. So it's been pretty successful this year. The only hiccup we're having right now is just a few programs that are under enrolled that are a little difficult to market. That's what we're doing.
Shirley, how about a nice piece of literature like we see from the politicians that they send in the mail that tells what we do, what we have, that actually gets in the home with some color to it. I know you like color.
Yeah.
It talk about the different things we have, and it'll be in the home, they can see it. I know, and I like the State of the District breakfast, but that's not where your stakeholders, that's your principals and your partners, the people that need to hear it, it's the stakeholders, and that's who we need to get to. And I think if we could get a nice piece of literature in their door where they can see exactly what we offer, the different choices that they have, would be helpful.
So, Mr. Mead, I think you work in our department. So the first thing is that is part of the marketing plan, is to do a, like you mentioned, a shiny piece of material that shows up in your mailbox. So that's going to have to support social media because not everyone checks their mail on time. So we'll have to do both. It takes 7 to 8 times for people to hear the message. And then just as you mentioned, the State of the District has to evolve. And so just this morning, Dr. Alfred Stevens and Dr. Javier, we were talking about who has been on the invitation list in the past. And so we have evolved that to include those stakeholders so that there's parents, there's business owners, there's business leaders, there are those who are in the community who can hear the story. We will have principals there, we will have teachers there, but the majority of the room should not be Aldine. It should be the Aldine community.
And are you also looking at the African American newspaper in the Northeast? The 2 local newspapers we have?
Oh, absolutely. We can't ignore them. We also need to start looking at the papers that are just outside our doors. Maybe the community impact, although it's not necessarily in Aldine, it catches the fringes. So we can't just, leave it to chance. We're going to have to cover everything.
And are we also covering, I don't know how strong we are now in our elementaries, with our PTAs or PTOs, are we, because that's a way to get to the parents that do come to those meetings, then we can talk about, or someone can talk about what is offered in the district for these choices. And that's what we want to push this year, choices.
Yes, sir.
The different choices we have to compete with these schools.
I don't know if Ms. Avalos is going to say it publicly, but I know she wants to say something. But we've spoken, and our secret weapon, honestly, is going to be our relationship with Lone Star. Charter school doesn't have a relationship where they can say your child is going to graduate with an associate's degree, or your child's going to graduate college for all 6 hours. Most of them say you're going to graduate and be able to go to college. And ours is going to be, you're going to graduate with college hours. And so that's one of the things that we're working on right now as we speak with Dr. Blanson, Dr. Head, and building a relationship at Hall, at Davis High School, Aldine High School, our comprehensive high schools that traditionally have done a little bit of dual credit, but not a lot, looking at how we can strengthen Carver with P-TECH and so on and so forth. So that's our secret weapon for comprehensive, and I think it's going to be a game changer once we get it rolled out. But did you want to say something else? I know you were trying to say.
Well, I agree with you when you said that what I think the outside charters are looking at are the young kids.
Mhm.
Because IDEA is being very aggressive in the MacArthur area.
Yep.
They're going to the churches. They're going to the events at Baker Ripley. It's Spanish-speaking people. They come in a marked car that says IDEA on it. They're talking to parents one-on-one in Spanish about the young kids.
Yes, yeah.
You've got to figure out how we can counter that.
Mhm. That is it.
And I think we've talked about that before, that the social media is good, but it's in English. I mean, there are very, very few elements of our social media presence that are in Spanish.
They're knocking on doors.
And that's why I was saying
Yeah.
the task.
I think
That's the task force, yeah.
they would not have decided to come here if they didn't think the market was here.
No, the market's here. We've done our own research. We had one of our, we had a staff member from Spring with a Spanish sounding name, and we had Shalia Reed, and they both applied on the same day. Shalia is still waiting for a response. They called her that same day to try to get her kid enrolled in the school. So their market is our Latino or Hispanic parents. They don't want little African-American children or white children. They want our Hispanic kiddos. And so you're absolutely right. To counter that is the customer service that has to be reach our parents where they are. And so I like that other task force and how we can.
Yeah, that'll do it every time.
About the meeting that we have, the community meetings, can we maybe move those up this year? One where we go out and invite all the people into the high schools? Could we move that up a little bit since we're?
I think we're going to have those, but I think we're going to have to go to those campuses and have community meetings and go into the community. So I think we're going to have those verticals the same. They'll be the traditional, but for those specific campuses in those areas, and maybe even go to the MacArthur earlier and go be intentional about.
And I think on top of that, they are going to the community, but we have to also be very mindful of what the message is. What is it that they're saying to parents? What's connecting with parents? And a lot of the charters, even at the early ages, they're coming and they're selling that if you come to our schools, we're putting your students on a pathway to college entrance. And what Dr. Goffney said, we have even better than that. We can put them on a pathway to actual college entrance much earlier, leaving high school with associate's degree. But at the elementary, our opportunities through identifying students that are gifted in second grade, developing the pathway, articulating that we have a pathway to that same success, post-secondary success at our elementary schools. And that's part of what we're doing in redesigning our curriculum and redesigning our differentiation, identifying students earlier. So I think that it all plays together, but it's, if we go in and say that it's the same old Aldine, they've heard that song and dance. And we've got a lot to offer. And I think it's very much, we have to be very careful about crafting that right message.
And the financial impact that can have on a family. I mean, that is saving a lot of money in college to be able to do it the way that we're doing it.
And also a lot of the charter schools, I know on the secondary level, I know we're talking about elementary, but a lot of the parents want to know back to safety. That's the first thing they bring up, the data. Look how many students were expelled. Look how many fights were in that neighborhood school. So parents want to know that their child are safe. And that goes back to the numbers that we saw earlier. And that's true. They want to be safe.
I'll make sure all of those things are reflected in the communication, the marketing plan that I present in January. Mr. Mead, any more questions?
No, I think, any question from the board? I think you covered it pretty thoroughly, Shirley.
Thank you. If not, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Abel? Nothing? All right. Okay.
Mr. Mead, Dr. Goffney, my first consent item is at page 201. And that is my routine agenda item. There are two. I'm sure you have lots of questions for those. If not, if you don't, one of these days y'all are gonna have a question. I'll be ready for you. We also have the board committee reports. We have the policy committee with second reading on update 114. Any questions about any of those? Well, that concludes my agenda.
Okay. Well, if that concludes your agenda, then we will adjourn into executive session under section 551071, consultation with attorney, section 551074, personnel matters, section 551072, real estate, section 551076, security, personnel or devices, and section 551082, student disciplinary matters, if any, under the Open Meetings Act. It is now 8:19 p.m.